Hello guys, welcome back to the channel, and this year in the NHL has definitely been unprecedented, we can all agree, with the flat salary cap era having a direct effect on each and every single team in the NHL, affecting their approach not just between the draft to an extent, but to their trades and free agency overall. We've seen a lot of free agents, UFAs and RFAs included, that are not getting the term or the AAV that they're looking for that went in effect as to where they were going to land. And we've seen a lot of restricted free agents in particular that usually would be qualified in years past by their teams, but because of, say, the kind of money that they would be looking for, they can't simply afford it for the organization side of things, they become UFAs. We've seen a lot of instances this offseason where normally these restricted free agents are qualified and they weren't qualified, and now they're unrestricted free agents on the market up for grabs. But that goes in hand with what we're discussing today regarding these more coveted restricted free agents. They have yet to sign with their clubs. Yes, they have been qualified, but they very well could be on their way out as trade bait given the financial crisis that all these teams in the NHL are currently dealing with. So that's what I'll be discussing with you today. These key RFAs, who they are, why they could be traded, decide for the team side of things, how they rack up when it comes to their cap situation, why it would make sense to deal them, why they shouldn't be dealt, and everything in between. But before I go further, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button if you end up enjoying this kind of hockey content. But without further ado, let's get right into this video. And to start off, we have MacKenzie Weegar, left defenseman, but he has a right-hand shot from the Florida Panthers. Weegar is probably one of the guys who has had the most talk over these past couple weeks to month plus now regarding trade rumors, and what has come out recently with Weegar and his team, his agent, has said their disgruntlement with really not reaching a deal and how everything has been handled with Florida. So it seems kind of inevitable at this point that MacKenzie Weegar will be dealt this offseason. It's just a matter of when and where. But if you don't know him, Weegar is a 26-year-old right-hand defenseman, but does play the left side. I do believe he can play the right side as well, but from everything that I've seen, he does play more so the left side. And Weegar, he's 6 foot 200 pounds, was originally drafted in, yes, the 7th round back in 2013 by the Florida Panthers. Currently has a cap at a 1.6 mil and has really established himself as a sound two-way, more stay-at-home, but can provide some offensive defenseman. And in 45 games played over this past season for the Florida Panthers, he had 18 points, including 7 goals and 11 assists. And the year prior, he had 15 points in just over 60 games. So Weegar, he's been an NHL mainstay for really 3 years now. And with this Florida Panthers blue line that really has been subpar over these past couple years, it kind of might leave you scratching your head why they want to part ways with Weegar. But clearly, they have an idea that they're going with here. I really like what Bill Zito has been doing this offseason as the newly crowned GM for the Florida Panthers, originally from the Columbus Blue Jackets organization, as we all know. But nonetheless, Weegar, there's been a lot of rumors with him. There were rumors that maybe he would go to Toronto, but they couldn't apparently work out a deal where Toronto wasn't interested enough. I've seen reports with Weegar possibly going to, say, the Winnipeg Jets, which may very well make sense, given all the Patrick Laine rumors, for instance, as the Florida Panthers have really come in as of late as one of the more front runners and have been discussions with the Winnipeg Jets from all that I've seen to suggest that they are showing interest in Laine. So Weegar could very well be a part of that deal, part of a bigger deal, which would make a lot of sense for the Winnipeg Jets to add a defenseman. And Weegar wouldn't be the biggest piece, obviously. I think there's more to it. And another guy that I'll touch on this video could add into it as well. But nonetheless, Weegar is a very talented, more two-way defenseman. Really show that he was putting up just roughly 20 points in 40 plus games this past season. So he can provide that offense, but you wouldn't expect too much from him. But as a 26-year-old defenseman who has really come into his own this past year as a 7th round pick is nothing short of impressive. He's been a solid defenseman, and I would only assume that Florida would be willing to give him up, knowing that they're going to better their defense overall. They brought in Marcus Nudavara and Radko Gudas, so they do have some flexibility now in that defense to make things happen with, say, some trades, and I don't expect them to be done yet this offseason by any means. So nonetheless, Mackenzie Blackwood, expect him to be traded this offseason. Is just a matter of when and where. A very interesting defenseman. I think there's plenty more to give with him. More of a late bloomer, as you will, with a lot of guys, even Devon Tays, who was an RFA, who was traded already from the New York Islanders to the Colorado Avalanche. Mackenzie Blackwood could see himself in a very similar, if not same situation, as to maybe the kind of return the Panthers get, but I hope for Bill Zito's sake he gets a better return than 2 second-round picks. But we'll see. But nonetheless, Weegar, keep an eye on him. He very well could be dealt this offseason. Next up, we have a guy who very well could be dealt for him as part of a bigger deal or just the two in themselves, and Jack Roslovic. Roslovic, former first-round pick back in 2015 by the Winnipeg Jets. I believe he's drafted 25th overall. My memory serves me correct. And he has been a very interesting, and I've really been a fan of his game, centerman, and can play the right wing as well. He's 23 years old. This past year with the Winnipeg Jets, he had a solid season for them, really not getting too much playing time, however. In 71 games played, he had 12 goals, 17 assists for 29 points. The year prior, he had 24 points, and things really just haven't looked like the perfect fit with Winnipeg. And there's been plenty of rumors circulating around him as well. Over this past month, there was an expectation that he would possibly go to the Vegas Golden Knights as part of a Nate Schmidt deal, and there were rumors that he'd possibly go to the Florida Panthers. So there has been discussions there. They've died down since then, but nonetheless, Roslovic is a guy who very well could be getting a change of scenery this offseason, and I think there's plenty of give with his game. He's a very sound centerman slash winner, has a decent two-way game, and there's plenty to give. He's just getting started in his NHL career, a guy that most teams wouldn't necessarily give up on, but for Winnipeg, they only have $27,000 in cap space currently, so they don't have anything to work with and re-sign him as it is, which is why they are surely not down. I don't think Shovel Day Off is done by any means. That's why these Patrick Laine rumors have been heating up, among other things. So I very well could see a situation, and we could see a situation where Roslovic is part of a bigger deal with Laine possibly going to Florida, which would make a lot of sense given the assets that Florida has. You'd think Aaron Ekblad would have to be part of that deal. And I'll probably touch on that in a future video if a trade doesn't happen before then. But nonetheless, a lot of things can happen, but Roslovic could very well be on his way out. You can look as the Columbus Blue Jackets as a possible landing spot for Roslovic as well, so keep that in mind as, say, part of a bigger deal because he is originally from that area. So all these things to consider, but nonetheless, Roslovic, a very solid young centerman slash winger in the NHL, and he very well could be on his way out of Winnipeg this offseason. Next up, we have a guy that I might get some hate in the comments for mentioning him, but Ryan Pulock, another coveted RFA defenseman, 26 years of age as well, has been one of the better two-way defensemen in all the NHL over these past couple of years, really solidified himself, not just in the regular season, but the playoffs for the Islanders was huge for them, and that top four defense. And yes, they have already traded away Devon Toews, so how could they do the same thing with Pulock? Well, there's a lot of reasoning to suggest that that very well can happen. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but it can happen. So here's why. Ryan Pulock, as we all know, another 26-year-old right-hand defenseman, plays on the right side usually, 6'2", 217 pounds, originally drafted in the first round back in 2013 by the New York Islanders. And Pulock this past year had 35 points in 68 games, including 10 goals and 25 assists. Really so sound two-way in his game. And he has a cap at $2 million. And I also want to mention when it came to Roslovic, currently Roslovic is not making much money. He only has a cap at $894K. Same thing can even be said with Weegar was making 1.6 mil. But nonetheless, when it comes to Pulock, he is making $2 million. You can expect him really be looking around the same deal as, say, Tony DeAngelo, for instance, for the New York Rangers, gain around 4.8 to even 5+ mil. He's definitely deserving of it, has a better defensive game than Tony DeAngelo and can provide the offense. And I'm saying that as a Rangers fan, so take that into account. But nonetheless, Pulock, why could he be on his way out for the New York Islanders when they already traded away a promising defenseman, Devon Toews? Well, it's their cap situation. We all know this. The Islanders currently rack up only having 8.9 mil in cap space that they are working with. And regarding the Panthers as well, I don't know if I mentioned that regarding them when it came to Weegar. I just want to add that the Panthers have 11.5 million cap space. So they do have cap space that they're working with. That really isn't the issue with them wanting to say move Weegar. It's more so just wanting to move him because of other deals, I would say, at this point in time. But nonetheless, when it comes to the Islanders, they don't have a lot of cap space, and that may seem a decent amount of bringing in Pulock still, but they still have to sign Matthew Barzal. And Barzal, I feel like if he was, say, going to take a discount, a deal probably would have happened already. So Barzal could very well, in a normal, not flat cap era, could be making anywhere between 8 to even tops 10.5, 11 mil if a team is, say, offer sheeting. That probably isn't happening at this point in time, but Barzal is definitely going to be looking upwards of anywhere between 7.5+ mil. And because of that reason, you can't afford Ryan Pulock, barring any trades or salary dumps that happen. I know that they're working from all that I've seen to get rid of Johnny Boychuk's contract, for instance. Maybe that will come to fruition, but teams are not biting at it at this point in time. And yes, I know Lou Lamoriello was very quiet with the moves he normally makes. You normally don't find out a lot about his interests or trades that happen until they actually happen themselves. So look, Pulock could stay with the Islanders. Could he take a pay cut? Sure, he could. Doesn't mean he will. I'm not sure, especially given what Tony DeAngelo just made, for instance. I think Pulock is looking at that and trying to get a better idea as he's deserving of something around that same area. So if that's the case, how can the Islanders afford both him and Barzal? And I know the Islanders aren't trading Barzal. The only way Barzal is really out of the island for the most part is if he's offer sheeted. And there really isn't anything to suggest that can happen because most teams in the NHL just simply can't afford it at this point in time. But Pulock is another guy who the Islanders, they love, but it wouldn't surprise me to see him on his way out if they know for a fact that teams aren't willing to, say, do salary dumps for them or trade up some of those bigger contracts. Even Nick Leddy, for example. Who knows if there's going to be a suitor there if they go down that avenue if Boychuk doesn't work. A lot of time, a lot of things can happen, but nonetheless, Ryan Pulock, be on the look for him to possibly be trade bait this offseason if they can't free up the cap space. And I want to make that clear, if they cannot free up the cap space enough outside of signing Matthew Barzal. Because as it is, they very well could sign Matthew Barzal to the exact cap that they currently have, if not more, at $8.9 million. So they're in a tight bind. Lou Lamoriello knows this, but expect Ryan Pulock trade rumors to heat up this offseason if nothing else changes. Next up, we have Dylan Strome, and I want to make something clear. I was going to mention Ryan Strome in this video as well, but I ended up holding off because all the reports I've seen as of today are suggesting that Ryan Strome is inching closer to a deal with the Rangers. Doesn't mean it's going to happen, no, but these are some more reliable sources I've been seeing, so because of that, I'm going to hold off from having Ryan. I really want to have him in the video. I want to have him in the thumbnail. That'd be cool. Him and his brother. It still can happen, but it's seeming more unlikely as of now. Things can change, I know, and who knows? I could very well be wrong. After making this video, Ryan Strome could be dealt today. Who knows? But I'm just saying it seems that that is not going to be the case at this point in time. But let's get to Dylan Strome. Another guy, the younger brother of the two, obviously has been in plenty of trade rumors really since back early spring, going around April or so, regarding there were a lot of times in place where the Blackhawks were shopping Dylan Strome and a deal just simply didn't happen. And Strome is a guy who, if I'm the Blackhawks in this full rebuild as they have now committed, you don't want to get rid of a guy like Dylan Strome in my mind. Even after, say, having a slight down year, I don't think it's much to phase them. The 23-year-old centerman, and I do believe he can play the wing. If I am wrong, though, let me know in the comments below. He's 6'3", 200 pounds. He was drafted in the first round back in 2015 by the Arizona Coyotes. Was part of that trade when Nick Schmaltz going the other way, as we all know. And he has a cap hit of $863K, so not a lot. And he's definitely due for an upgrade, no question. And if you look at Chicago, they currently have cap space of $5.2 million, which you would think that's probably enough to get it done for Strome. But I don't think the Chicago Blackhawks, at this point in time at least, are not trying to go down that road to sign Strome. And who knows, Maybe he could get more. I doubt it. I think Strome's definitely more on the lines of his brother at this point in time, looking anywhere between possibly $4 and $4.5 million. Maybe less, maybe more. Who knows? But I will say this: Strome is a very promising player with a lot of potential. I know a lot of teams are interested in him. Should he be available via trade? And all the reasons have suggested that. Just a matter of what could Chicago really get in return without, say, losing that trade. Given his youth, especially in 58 games played this past year, Strome had 38 points, including 12 goals and 26 assists. He had 51 points a year prior, so I'm not going to put much on Strome in his really sophomore year in the NHL, is more so being an NHL mainstay. Because look at Alex DeBrincat, another guy who had quite the down year for the Blackhawks. A lot of guys did in that offense, so I wouldn't let it phase him too much. He's only 23 years old. I think there's still plenty of potential there to be more along the lines of his brother when it comes to point production, possibly being in that 50 to 60 range throughout his career. He's only 23 years old. He's been coveted for so long for good reason. Things have taken its course with him regarding his NHL career. It didn't work out with the Coyotes. We know this, but nonetheless, Strome is a guy you should definitely look out for to be traded this offseason should Chicago try to pursue that avenue again. I'm assuming that they would. I'm not sure that they're necessarily going to go in on re-signing him, even though they don't have any other guys that they currently have to deal with re-signing, but they do give Strome basically the money he's probably looking for, which would be a significant upgrade. They're not going to have much of any money that they're currently working with, and unless they do drastic deals I've touched on previously regarding, say, Taves or Kane ever throughout this rebuild, they're simply not going to have the money to make it work. So keep that in mind. Dylan Strome, he may very well stay if they can work out a deal, but there's a lot of reason to believe he is on his way out in Chicago. Next up, we have Chris Tierney from the Ottawa Senators. Tierney originally traded from the San Jose Sharks as part of that deal with Erik Karlsson going the other way, if my memory serves me correct. Tierney, another coveted RFA that very well could be on his way out. He's been subject to trade rumors for quite a bit now over this past year, and now that Ottawa really has stockpiled, has had a great offseason between their draft, obviously, bringing in Tim Stützle, Jake Sanderson, etc., and bringing in guys in the offseason when it comes to free agency, with Dadonov leading the way as of now. when you look at their center depth, is not definitely favoring Tierney by any means, and he is a guy who very well could be a solid third line or even in some cases second line center for teams. And if you look at what has happened over this past year, he was getting playing time in the year before that. He was getting a lot, but there are reasons to suggest that Ottawa wants their young guns to really be in there in that top 9 in that center position, and that very well could lead to Chris Tierney on his way out. But nonetheless, Tierney is 26 years of age. He currently has a cap hit of 2.9 mil, is definitely due for a raise in my opinion, given how well he's played with Ottawa over these past 2 years. He's 6'1", 195 pounds. He was originally drafted in the second round in 2012 by the Sharks and was traded, as I mentioned. And in 71 games played over this past season with the Senators, he had 37 points in that top 6 and had 11 goals and 26 assists as well. He had 48 points the year prior, which was really standing out for him, getting big line minutes for Ottawa as they were really starting that rebuild. And now when you look at Ottawa, they have so much depth at that center position as it is, with the guys that are currently in the lineup and on the way in that prospect pool that is so unbelievably deep. It's the best in the NHL, no doubt in my mind at this point in time, at least. That the Canes make a good argument, the Rangers, but nonetheless, Ottawa has such an amazing prospect pool. And with saying that, I think there's a lot of reason to believe Chris Tierney will be on his way out and could very well be traded for, say, just a couple picks or whatever it may be to a team that is looking for, say, a second or more so third line center. And Tierney can definitely do that. He's still only 26 years of age. He has proven his capability to step up when he is in a bigger role with the roster. And I think a lot of teams will be interested in him on a fairly decent deal. I think Tierney will be looking around the same lengths of, I shouldn't say Ryan Strome. He'll definitely be not making as much as Ryan Strome, but probably around maybe one more mil per se than what he's currently making at 2.9. I think anywhere close to 4 or 3.5 is what he'd be looking for, and rightfully so. Maybe more, maybe less, but that's just my hypothetical as of right now. But Tierney is a guy who would make a lot of sense for many teams in the NHL looking for depth at the center position or wing, because he can play the wing as well, if my memory serves me correct. But nonetheless, look out for Chris Tierney this offseason. He very well could be a trade chip sooner rather than later. And to cap off this video, probably one of the reasons why you even clicked on it is, yes, Mikhail Sergachev. Now, I know Lightning fans, you're saying, no way. There is no way they're going to allow to get rid of Sergachev. There's no way they're going to allow him to get offer sheet. There's no way they're going to allow to get him traded. And look, that may very well be true. Could Sergachev, say, sign a really small AAV and short-term deal just to help Tampa right now in this flat cap before they get trades in? Of course they can, but does that mean it's going to happen? No. And when you look at Tampa's situation, they don't even have $3 million that they're currently working with, and they still have all their 3 RFAs that they're dealing with to resign, and not just him, but Anthony Cirelli, who's becoming one of the more coveted two-way centerman forwards in all the NHL. Is going to be a Selke nominee sooner than later. You have Sergachev and himself, who is becoming one of the best two-way defenseman in the game at the age of 22. And then you have Erik Chernak as well, who's another coveted defenseman who won't be as costly, but is definitely deserving of an upgrade and pay by the Tampa Bay Lightning. So they have these 3 RFAs. How are they going to be able to afford them? You know, there's been the expectation that, yes, they will trade off, whether it's Tyler Johnson, Alex Killorn, Yanni Gourde, the list goes on. They've even approached Steven Stamkos, from what Elliot Friedman touched on a couple of weeks ago. He's not letting that happen, obviously, but nonetheless, Tampa is trying to free up cap space. Can they make it happen? They're definitely trying to make it happen. We know this. But nonetheless, even after making cap space for whether it's Cirelli and Chernak, you're still left with Sergachev, who realistically, if he was a UFA, he would undoubtedly be making around 8+ mil, given how great he's playing. You can look at Jacob Trouba's for contract, for instance, and get an idea of the kind of money that is deserving him to be making, if not more. Sergachev is that good, and for good reason. The 22-year-old, originally drafted in the first round back in 2016 by the Montreal Canadiens, was part of that Jonathan Drouin trade that Tampa is definitely winning at this point in time, but at the same time, they very well could be without Sergachev sooner rather than later. 6'2", 217 pounds, an absolute beast, making a cap hit of just under $900K currently, and in 70 games played this past season, had 34 points, including 10 goals and 24 points, and had 32 points the year prior. Was a huge part of them in their playoff run, winning the Stanley Cup this past year. Hats off to him. I'm sure that was a great experience, the best experience one can imagine as a hockey player in itself. But Sergachev, he deserves a big payday. There's no doubting that. Even if he makes $4 million, that is just insane. And even then, Tampa can't afford it as of right now with these other 2 RFAs. So can Tampa free up the cap space? They're definitely searching that avenue, but no team is really biting the bullet for them to make it happen. So Tampa's in a very tough spot right now. Breezeball's in a tough spot. Things are really quiet. Things are really going to heat up over these next month or two, no doubting, before next season starts, whenever that's going to be, probably sometime in January as of right now. But nonetheless, Sergachev, an amazing two-way defenseman in the NHL today is only getting better. It's not even close to hitting his prime yet, which is why he's just so promising indeed. And Tampa very well could be in a tough scenario where they have to trade Sergachev off because they simply can't afford him given all these RFAs and the lack of being able to, say, make trades for guys that they want to get rid of per se. And Johnson, who they had to send down to the AHL currently because he cleared waivers, they couldn't even trade him in time. They cleared waivers with him because they couldn't get him dealt in such a short period of time. You look at Yanni Gordon, all these guys have modified to full no trade clauses as well. So they're in a very tight bind as it is, and there's all good reason to believe that yes, Mikhail Sergachev could very well be traded by the Tampa Bay Lightning if they in fact cannot make the proper moves to keep him long term. I don't think that they can as of right now. They definitely have work to be done. Breezeball is working religiously, I'm sure, to free up this cap space, but to no avail as of now. So with saying that, Mikhail Sergachev is definitely a trade chip. But that's going to conclude this video. So let me know your thoughts in the comments below, guys. What other RFAs do you think might get traded this offseason, if at all? Did you agree with my picks? Do you disagree? I understand the arguments for all these. I'm not saying these guys are going to be dealt, but there is solid reasoning as to why it could happen. And it would make a lot of sense for the majority of these teams, if not all, even with them really liking a lot of these players. So take all those things into account, guys. But let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Check out my previous videos regarding the series I started on this channel with the teams with the brightest future in the NHL. It's a longer series I've been doing with the New York Rangers. I did a video with Statboy Steven. I just did a video regarding the Toronto Maple Leafs with, yes, John from Hot Take Hockey, so make sure to check them out, and all the other videos in between. So much great content coming forward on the channel here, guys, regarding more videos and more collaborations with other YouTubers regarding that series, among other things. So make sure to check it out and let me know your thoughts in the comments below. As always, hit that like and subscribe button if you ended up enjoying this kind of hockey content. It really means a ton, guys. And with saying that, I can't thank you enough. Help us get to 2K subscribers. We're so close there, but I know we will surely get there because you guys are awesome. And without further ado, I'll be back real soon.